Oh, no. Please take out your notebooks, okay? Get your notebooks. Please take out your notebooks and face me, okay? While I talk today, okay? Those who, sorry to go to the bathroom yet, or just have your opportunity, okay?
Kevin!
Making it rain.
I won't make it rain.
Tab, what are you doing?
I'm sorry.
What?
Those who were. He's never looking before.
He dropped.
Oh, all that stuff kind of like fell over my thing.
Sorry.
You got a steak.
Where is it?
It's right there. Where is it?
World star.
Sneeze.
Alright, there's this wall of staples.
What you gonna do? Give him a time
Yes.
You should kick her out.
Spank him.
Why did I say
Get out of here.
Had to come up running in.
Now those who were with me last term,
I'm strapped up.
okay. You know that we spoke about happiness, okay? Now, the ancient Greek philosophers and the Christian philosophers and the saints throughout the ages have all discussed happiness as man's final end, okay? And all of us, by nature, we seek happiness. All of us. We want to be happy. That's the goal in life. Okay? And the ancient Greek philosophers, they saw happiness as being achieved through virtue. Okay? Now, we as Christians, we realize happiness, perfect happiness, okay? Perfect, okay? The perfection of happiness is only in heaven. We realize that. Only there will we find perfect happiness without end. That's the goal in life. That's our final end. Okay? But in this life, okay, here on earth, okay, happiness is found in part. Okay, we can attain happiness in part in virtue. Virtue. That is, leading a virtuous life. If you lead a virtuous life, you'll be happy. That's what the ancient Greek philosophers held. That's what the church teaches. So, what is virtue? Does anyone remember what virtue is? Who had me for the last term? Okay. Virtue? Rebecca, do you remember? Can you remember way back? No? Thomas? Do you remember
It's in my
virtue?
notes.
Virtue, it's in your notes? Okay, well,
Oh, hold on. It's strength, power, good habit.
okay, virtue, okay, virtue is, okay, a good habit. And when something is a habit, we do it like second nature. Because you keep doing it, and then it becomes easy. Okay? So if you practice a virtue, okay, work toward a virtue, then it becomes like second nature. Okay? A virtue is a good habit, which gives us the power to act with right reason. Okay? Which gives us the power, because that's what virtue means. It means power. The power to act with right reasons. If you're a virtuous person, you're going to act reasonably. And if you practice the virtues, then it becomes second nature. Kind of like driving a car. When you first start driving a car, you're worried about other cars on the road. After you drive for a while, it becomes second nature. You don't have to think about it. You just do it. And if we lead a good life, a life of virtue, then we'll attain relative happiness here on earth. That's what the ancient Greek philosophers taught. And that's why we have to try to strive for virtue in this life, to lead a virtuous life. And if we lead a virtuous life, we'll be happy in this life. Now one of the virtues that I've touched on in a roundabout way, but I'm going to talk about today is purity. Purity is a virtue. Jesus says something about purity on the Sermon on the Mount, the greatest sermon ever preached. He says something about purity. Does anyone know what he said? It's one of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. So purity is necessary to see God in heaven. You have to be pure. So purity, blessed are the pure of heart. They shall see God. And purity takes in, when we're talking about purity, we're talking about thoughts, and words, and actions. We must be pure in our thoughts, be pure in our words, be pure in our actions. One of the things that works against purity today, and I know this as a priest confessor who hears confessions, that works against purity in thought is pornography. It's a scourge. Pornography makes up 20% or 30% of the internet. It's very addictive. Men are more inclined to this than women because by nature we're different. And it's like a cocaine high even. People can become addicted to pornography and keep going back to it. And it destroys marriages, destroys relationships. The U.S. bishops just wrote a letter on, they're coming out with a letter on this, how they see it's destroyed families, the right relationship between husband and wife, because some people get consumed in this, So we have to be pure in our thoughts. Sometimes people confess to me, I had an impure thought, Father. And I said, not necessarily a sin. And anyone can have an impure thought. An impure thought is just a temptation. It's what we do with the thought after it comes that determines whether it's sinful. If you keep entertaining it and get pleasure from it and don't try to fight against it, then it's a sin. How do we know that? Because Jesus says, if you look at a woman lustfully, you commit adultery in your heart. It can't be for women too, not just men, but we have to be pure in our thoughts, pure in our words, pure in our actions, and with actions, purity in actions, that's where chastity comes in. And that's what we talked about the past few days. Chastity is purity in actions. Depending upon your state in life, if you're single, if you're married, or if you're a priest, celibate, or a consecrated virgin. Now, purity also requires something else, or includes something else. Purity includes this modesty. Now, purity is a virtue, chastity is a virtue, modesty is a virtue. Modesty is part of the virtue of temperance. I think Mr. Masteller, did Mr. Masteller go over the cardinal virtues with you last time? Okay. So the cardinal virtues are prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Temperance is moderating one's desire for pleasure with right reason. Okay? So you moderate your desires to obtain pleasure through your reason. Okay? Modesty comes under temperance. Okay? So temperance is moderation, okay, of the desire for pleasure. With right reason. Okay? Because that's what a virtue is. It concerns right reason. And we're fallen creatures. We have to fight against our fallen nature to practice temperance. Adam and Eve, before the fall, they were easily practiced temperance. Okay? They wouldn't have eaten the whole box of Oreo cookies because they would have known that only a couple of cookies is good. To eat too many would be bad. Okay? They practiced temperance in regard to their desire for sexual pleasure, because they could look at each other in their nakedness and feel no shame. But after the fall, they couldn't do that. That's why they had to cover their bodies. Okay? And this is where modesty comes in, because modesty is part of temperance. Okay? It comes under temperance, but modesty, let me see, modesty protects, okay? Modesty protects okay? Or safeguards, okay? Purity of heart, okay? Modesty is what protects purity. It safeguards purity for modest. Okay? And when we talk about modesty, many people think, and rightly so, how we dress. Okay? Modesty in dress means that we don't, well, it avoids what is offensive. Okay? Avoids what is offensive or would be an occasion of sin for someone, okay? For another, okay? For another, okay? So we don't want to dress in a way that would be an occasion for sin, for someone to look at us and desire us in a way that would be impure. Okay? You want to dress in a way that would be that does not reveal too much and would have someone want us, desire us in an impure way. Yes.
Would that like go for like the brothers that like to sag their pants like the kneecaps?
Well. I think that's not modest. No, I mean,
Okay.
that's a violation of modesty.
But this is good.
And
This is good.
Well, that's good, yeah, but I mean, to walk down the street, I see people walking down in my neighborhood with their pants down to their knees, and with their undershorts showing, and I think, well, that's not modest. Okay. Yes.
What do you think about girls' bikinis?
At the beach?
Well,
On the tan?
One piece only, bro.
well, no, actually, that's a good question, because it depends where you're at, okay? It may not offend modesty if you're at the beach and people are in swimming suits, but if you're wearing that, if you walk into school or a church dressed like that, well, then you're drawing attention to yourself, and then that's not good, okay? So then you're being an occasion for someone to look at you in an impure way. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure it protects modesty and not offend someone else or be an occasion to sin for someone else.
What if you were at the beach and then you go to church?
You put on a cover-up.
Well, then you put on something else.
But what if you don't have anything else?
Well, then you don't go to church.
But it's
What if there's church at the beach?
Well, then you make sure you bring the right
I've been
clothes.
to a church
What if
in Mexico. The chapel was on the beach.
Now,
I was Catholic when I went to church.
You go to church in Mexico.
I've been to like church,
Yeah. When we're in Mexico, we can go to church on the beach. Or we can go to
now I mentioned. Okay, I mentioned virtue. Okay. And our desire for happiness. Okay. The problem with happiness. Okay. The problem with happiness. Problem with the pursuit of happiness. Okay.
It's a song too.
Because we all pursue happiness. We want happiness. We want to be happy. Okay. Is that okay? We have a fallen nature. Okay. Our fallen nature. I mean human nature. Okay. That's because of the sin of Adam and Eve. We have a fallen human nature, and what's the result of our fallen human nature? Our intellect has been darkened, our free will has been weakened. Okay. The intellect is darkened. Okay. We're not as sharp as Adam and Eve were. Okay. Our free will, okay, is weakened. Okay. And people, unfortunately, pursue happiness in the wrong way. Okay? They think something is good when it's not really good. Okay? So the problem with the pursuit, our fallen human nature, intellect is darkened, free will is weakened. We pursue happiness. We pursue something that appears to be good that is not really good. Okay? We pursue things that, well, I'll just say this, make it simple. Okay? We pursue false goods. Okay? False goods. Okay? They're not really true goods. If someone is a thief, okay, you're pursuing what may be good under normal circumstances, acquiring a certain amount of wealth, but you're pursuing it in a wrong way. And if someone is addicted to drugs, okay, then you're pursuing feeling good in a wrong way. Okay? Someone may start out using a drug that is not a hard drug, and end up being addicted to a hard drug and harming themselves in the process. Okay? And we can look at that and say, okay, that person's not pursuing a good in the right way. We can see that, and the person can't see that because they get enmeshed in this sin. Okay? I mentioned to my class that I was with last term, I had a cousin who just died. He was a dentist, and he got addicted to drugs, and it killed him. Drugs can kill you. And he had a successful dental practice, and he ended up pursuing drugs and getting into other bad things as a result of that, and he ended up dying as a result. It's sad. Okay, so some other false goods. I mentioned pornography. People get addicted to pornography and think this is something that's good, and it's not good. Okay? God wants us to be happy, and so the church, Jesus Christ, teach us the way to virtue, the way to happiness. Okay? And one of those false goods, okay, in regard to chastity, okay, is if we misuse our sexual powers in pursuing the pleasure of sex in a disordered way. Okay, and I'm pursuing the pleasure of sex in a disordered way can have bad consequences. Okay. Any sin has bad consequences, but this one in particular, that's why I'm spending time on this, because it affects the whole of society. Okay? Now I'm going to write something, a truth here. Maybe you've seen it before, maybe you haven't, okay? The truth is this: God always forgives. Okay? If we're sorry, God always forgives. If you're really truly sorry, God will always forgive you, okay? Man, okay, sometimes forgives. Okay? We would like people to forgive us, but sometimes people don't. They should, because Jesus says, if you do not forgive others, then God will not forgive you your sins. But man sometimes forgives. Nature never forgives. Okay? Nature never forgives. And I'm going to cite some figures now showing how nature never forgives. Yes?
Okay, so you said that God says that man should always, forgive.
We should. Yes?
Well, what if, it's like a constant battle with a certain person because it's always going back to doing what they've done wrong, and then it ends up hurting you, and then it causes, or not just you, just, more than one thing in general, so you can't forgive them or let them, keep forgiving, because if it just keeps, doing harm, you've forgiven them so many times.
Well, we can't always forgive, okay? And we can't always keep praying for someone. That's what we do. We keep praying for them and hoping that they will repent, that they will reform their lives, okay? We continue to do that, okay? Because when the apostles asked Jesus about this, if you remember, see, under the Pharisees' rule, you were obligated, and you were not obligated, but I would say you were considered very, very merciful if you forgave someone 7 times. 7 times is like the limit. If you forgave someone 7 times and they kept sinning, then it's like you said, okay, forget it, we're not going to forgive anymore. What does Jesus say when he's asked the question, how many times should we forgive, Lord? 7 times? What does Jesus say? What does Jesus say? He says, not 7 times, but 70 times 7 times. In other words, you don't stop forgiving, because you're not going to count up 70 times 7. Okay? So you keep forgiving people, okay? And you keep praying for people. Some people are hardened in sin. You keep praying for them and making sacrifices for them and maybe encouraging them to do good. Okay? It may take a lifetime. Okay? And because people's souls are at stake. So we try our best. Okay? Keep praying for them. That's what we do. And okay. Nature never forgives. People's misuse of their sexuality has grave social consequences. First of all, to themselves, okay? I read St. Paul yesterday. When St. Paul says, don't be deceived, people who are committing these sins, and not only sins of violating chastity, but any sin where you're committing something serious, okay, you're not going to attain the kingdom of heaven. So the greatest fallout, you could say, of someone sinning, violating chastity, is your own salvation. You're going to lose salvation. Okay? That's the spiritual harm. Okay? But there's also physical harm that comes, and these figures aren't well known. I don't know why they're not well known. Probably because of our culture. The disorder that we see in regard to living out a chaste life. Okay, but these are figures from the Center for Disease Control. This is in Atlanta. They keep records all over the country of diseases, okay, including sexually transmitted diseases. They call them STIs, a sexually transmitted infection. Okay, and
They changed it. It's not.
yeah, it's not an STD anymore. It used to be STD, sexually transmitted disease. Now they're calling it STI, sexually transmitted infection.
STI.
That's SVU. That's special
No, I'm saying it
victims
sounds
unit.
like a criminal thing. I know special victims unit, girl.
Okay. This is the frightening statistic that is out there that you don't hear about. Okay, 1 in 3 Americans. Okay, 1 in 3 Americans has a sexually transmitted infection. Okay.
So,
How do you register?
well, it ain't me.
I'll count them for you right now.
You're not even counting.
1, 2, 3. That's what I'm doing.
2, 3, 4.
Jimmy has one.
Of course Jimmy has one.
Gosh, you hear what Jimmy said? Jimmy's like, I got 6.
This isn't something to laugh about. This is tragic. Okay. No, this is really tragic. 1 in 3 Americans. Okay. 1 in 3 Americans. Okay. Americans here we mean those in the U.S. Okay. Has thoughts.
1 in 3 Americans. I thought it was in China.
Well, an STI.
I thought it was China too, Tom.
STI means sexually transmitted infection. Okay. 1 in 3 Americans has an STI. Okay? Fellas,
Oh no.
I'm talking. You listen. So, 1 in 3 Americans has a sexually transmitted infection. Okay, that's an incredible number. Here's what the article says. Okay, this is from LifeSite News. The U.S. Center for Disease Control released a report. This was actually February of this year. Okay. The current total number of sexually transmitted infections in the U.S. is listed at 110 million, approximately 1/3 of the entire U.S. population. Some 20 million new cases are diagnosed each year. Okay? And this is the other part of this, which I think applies to your generation. Okay, between the ages of 15 to 24. Okay. This is where most of the infections are. So it's more than 1/3 in this age group, 15 to 24, because this is the age group that is sexually active and spreading the diseases. Okay? One of the diseases is called the human papilloma virus. It's the most common infection. Okay? And followed by chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, herpes, HIV, which is AIDS. Okay? And
What? Which one? Oh yeah, dude.
I don't know the difference in that.
I had to do it for health class.
Yeah.
That had me scared.
So here's another figure. Half of U.S. teens who are sexually active, okay, will contract a sexually transmitted infection by the time they are 25.
Why y'all say my name? Oh, really? She's doing all that stuff. I'm sure.
Put him on blast.
Quite young, okay.
Corey on blast.
26, okay, here's another figure. 26% of U.S. teenage girls have contracted at least one of the 4 major sexually transmitted diseases. Okay? One of the problems with the human papilloma virus is that people don't know they have it because there are really no visible symptoms of it. It's going to be a major cause, along with chlamydia, which is another disease that people don't know they have, a major cause of cervical cancer in women. They're expecting this to just be an explosion of these diseases in the future, cancers resulting from sexually transmitted diseases. Genital herpes is another one. Genital herpes infects about 40% of the sexually active people between 15 and 40 years old. And that's a large percentage of people. There's no cure for genital herpes. And condoms don't protect against this, so people who say, well, use a condom, it doesn't because it's the skin-to-skin contact. People contract these diseases, and genital herpes, you can't get rid of it. There's no cure for it. I've had people tell me, Father, I did this once with someone, and I have this disease. And I said, well, nature never forgives. I mean, you violate the laws of nature, so to speak, and it's very unforgiving. We are at epidemic proportions of sexually transmitted diseases in the country. And that's because people aren't living a chaste life. If people were living a chaste life and only having sexual activity within the context of marriage, you wouldn't have this explosion of sexually transmitted diseases. It's sad, because it leads to depression, it leads to a lack of self-worth. It's very, well, it's a tragedy, okay? It really is. And there's another, you could say, fallout from, okay? There's a lot of poverty in this nation. Okay? Poverty that is really not necessary. It shouldn't be here. And one of the main causes of poverty is children being born out of wedlock. Because all the figures show that if children are born to a mother that is not married, okay, those children will grow up likely in poverty. They do not have the same opportunities as children growing up in a two-parent home, and if you have something to say, please raise your hand. Raise your hand, John. What?
Raise your hand, John.
Right?
John, raise your hand.
It makes,
Raise it
it
and
makes
say
you
it.
better.
The child that doesn't have both parents.
Well, it's more of a struggle if you don't have two parents. And I'm just saying poverty, okay, if you look at the statistics, okay, of those families, those children in poverty, okay, most of them come from the homes that don't have two parents. Okay? And that's because you don't have the opportunities where you have two parents living in the home. In 1965, okay, and this is all a result of not leading a chaste life. Okay, it's irresponsibility on the part of men to father children and then walk away from their responsibility. Okay? That is irresponsible. Okay? That's not what God's plan is. Okay? And there are social consequences to this. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those today, okay? But I'll cite some figures first, okay? In 1965, okay, the out-of-wedlock pregnancies, okay? Out-of-wedlock pregnancies, okay?
What are wedlock pregnancies?
Out of wedlock, you're not married, okay? Out of wedlock pregnancies, okay?
Thank you.
For the white population, it was 3%, okay?
Black ones would be the worst ones.
Black people are going to be freaking 20%.
It's 24%.
See what I say.
That it will be.
Okay, this is 1965.
About Hispanic.
Now you fast forward to today, okay, and I'll give you the rates, okay, with
Another raise.
okay, 2013, the white, I'll say working class because that's the figure I've seen. Okay. White working class, out of wedlock pregnancy, okay, is 24%.
Y'all dirty. Y'all dirty. No, it's going to be black people. It's going to be like 50%. 500%.
Is going to be.
They make babies like rabbits, man.
Okay, the Hispanic
And they also
is
do rub and shoot from the
53%.
Oh my god. Oh no, black like 70 something.
Black is about 70.
What? Oh my god, what I say? Holy
This is a cold world.
I don't point the finger at anyone in class here, okay? I mean, I'm just citing you the figures. because this, please, this isn't something to laugh about. It's sad, okay? Because what happens with family, with children, where you don't have a two-parent home, okay? I know this from my own years as a prosecuting attorney. Okay? And I worked in almost all white county in central Illinois. Okay? 95% of the boys I prosecuted for juvenile delinquency came from homes that they didn't have a mother and a father. 95%. That's what happens. If you don't come from a stable two-parent home, crime and is part of a big part of the problem, because the boys, they start hanging out with the wrong crowds, okay? it's crime, drugs, and for the girls, out of wedlock pregnancies. It's a cycle, okay, that just continues. And this is not good for society. Okay? God doesn't want this. Okay? God wants people born into two-parent homes where they'll have the security of knowing that they have a mother and a father there. Okay? Okay? I can say this, as a boy growing up, if I didn't have a father around to make sure that I was going to not go off and do bad things, I wouldn't have been as good as I was. Okay? I was more afraid of my father than I was of the police. The police, all they could do was arrest me. I was afraid my father would do something else to me if I got in trouble. Okay, so but this is what happens in fatherless homes. We have, you know, these problems is a problem with fatherhood. Okay? Because fathers walk away from their responsibility of being fathers. That's what happens. I see this in front of abortion clinics. I try to persuade women to not go into abortion clinics because they're walking in. Oftentimes they're with their boyfriends. The boyfriends bring them into the abortion clinic. Oh, I love you, and then they're gone. Okay? And they let the poor young woman deal with the pain and the agony of having killed their child. Okay? It's men not being men. Okay? These are unmanly men who are fathering children and walking away from it. We don't want that to happen, okay? Because it affects all of society. This is Catholic social teaching, this class. Okay? These figures are not good because this creates a society that is disordered. Okay? A rightly ordered society is a man and a woman get married, they have children, and the children can grow up with the security of a mother and a father. So, and the reason for this is not following God's plan for love, for life, for marriage and the family. Because you should be having sexual activity within the context of marriage, not before marriage, and then walking away when the girl gets pregnant, and that's not fair, okay, to the girl. That's why abortions are committed too, because the girl feels she's abandoned. This is the only option she has, okay, or she's pressured to do that. So we have all these bad social consequences. We've killed more than 55 million children in this country through abortion in the past 40 years. And most girls, I've stood in front of the abortion mills, they don't want to do this. They're forced to do it. They feel pressure to do it. Oftentimes by their boyfriends. Unmanly men. Here, go into the abortion clinic because I don't want a child. I wasn't doing this to have a child. So, and it's not just this country, okay? You know, here's the illegitimacy rate in England, okay? 45% of teenage pregnancies between 13 and 15 years.
Dang.
That's for 15 and
13 to 15.
Yeah.
They need to invent something over there, man.
45% of teenagers